Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Cox, and I'm the host of the New America Movement. We welcome you to our show this evening, and I have my son with me, Jordan Cox. He's my host. Jordan, say hello.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing this evening?
Wow, we got a great show, and we're just excited that you can tune in with us and listen to some of the great things that are happening around the country. Now, let me say, I'm 63 years old, and I've lived to see something that I thought I never would see, and that is Roe versus Wade being overturned. That's not any news to anyone in America. We've been seeing this flashed all over news media for the last week or two. But we want to talk about it on the podcast because there's still a lot of confusion in America about what that really means. Now, if you think about it, in 1973, I think it was January of the 22nd, that it finally became law that Roe versus Wade was considered the right of the federal government to protect a woman who wanted to have an abortion. And I have to say, people and groups and states have been going crazy over this issue. When you think about abortion today, in the modern time when science says, I think has been a friend to people who are pro-life, and that is that we know now that these babies, these fetuses have a heartbeat. And right here in South Carolina, there's been a big move along with many, many states across the union to say that, to pass something called the heartbeat bill. And that means if a doctor can detect a heartbeat, then you cannot have an abortion. Now, I think that is fair. I like that, and I think that it protects literally thousands of kids from being aborted every year. Now, you know, we use the word like kids, babies, fetuses. Now, we know that this is a fetus, but most people with common sense would say that if it has a heartbeat, it is certainly a life. And the question to me is, why are we so afraid to protect the life of what we know exists in that mother's womb? And we sort of twist it and say, well, that's a woman's right. Well, we're going to talk about that because, you know, I don't believe a woman has that right to abort a baby. And we're going to throw some thoughts around. Jordan, just take off on this. And you were not born in 1973, obviously, but I was a teenager. And at that time, I wasn't really sure what all that meant. I just knew that it was a very liberal idea that it would cost the lives of a lot of people around the world as well as in America. And today there are literally millions of people that have been aborted around the world. And it's shocking when you think about how many people can just pass this off as, well, so what? We're just killing babies. And there again, go using that word babies. But to me, it's a baby. When my wife became pregnant with you and Christina, I didn't look at her pregnancy as a
fetus.
A fetus. It was a human being inside. It was you. It was my daughter, Christina. You know, if you're driving down the road and you run a red light and you're drunk and you hit a woman who is pregnant and you kill that baby, it's considered to be vehicular homicide.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
And well, just what do you think about that? You're 30 years old. What do you think about these laws that have impounded you? Go ahead.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I know a girl that happened to. Very good girl, straight A student all through school. Was going a little too fast, rear-ended somebody. The person that was in the car was pregnant. The baby died. The woman didn't. The mom didn't. The baby did. They sentenced her to vehicular manslaughter, and she served over a year in jail. So, if you can go to jail for killing a baby, I'm sorry, I don't think that you should be able to get an abortion. Because that's killing a baby, and be happy about it and let it be like a big thing. Now, but I do want to say this one thing. Now that Roe versus Wade has turned over, I think here in South Carolina, you'll start seeing abortion being outlawed. I don't even think the heartbeat bill will be a thing anymore because the reason the heartbeat bill was brought up was because we were trying to fight abortion, and the only way we could do that was to say, okay, well, if it has a heartbeat, then you can't do it. And that was kind of like a little win for us in this war. Well, now, even if it has no heartbeat, the woman could be 6 weeks pregnant, just found out she can't get an abortion. That is where we hope in South Carolina where we're heading. Okay? So doesn't matter heartbeat or not. It is a baby. It is a child. It is everything between you and somebody else. And my biggest thing on this is I don't understand y'all freaking out over this Roe v. Wade stuff. I don't get it, because I can't imagine being upset that babies live. I can't imagine sitting here arguing with somebody about how it's my right to kill my baby. If a mother can go to jail for taking her baby and putting it in a bathtub and letting that water fill up, and she goes to jail for neglect, and she can't, even if she says, well, I just didn't want the baby no more, I couldn't afford it. Guess what? That's murder. She's still going to go to jail. They're not going to say, oh, well, you know what, Judge, she couldn't afford that baby. She couldn't afford it anyway, so the baby died, so it's okay. They're not going to say that. So why should they say that when it's in the womb? The most protected place for that baby. The safest place for that baby. You want your safe place, but you want to take the safe place of the innocent. Make that make sense to me. I mean, it's stupid. It's stupid.
Well, it's interesting because Roe versus Wade was passed on the assumption that the 14th Amendment would give women the right to be protected against the government from having an abortion. The sad thing about this is the 14th Amendment does not give a right to a woman to abort a baby. It's not about the government restricting a woman from having an abortion. It is about the fact that a woman who makes that choice, in light of what I would consider more educated people today, to say that that still is killing a child. And regardless if you think you have that right, there are a lot of things in this country that you don't have a right to do just because you think you do. The Fourth Amendment doesn't protect you on that. What do you think about that, Jordan?
Well, no, it's the 14th Amendment, you're right, does not. So this is the 14th Amendment. I'm going to shoot it back to you. So the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides a fundamental right to privacy that protects a pregnant woman's liberty to choose whether to have an abortion. Now, I don't think it says abortion in the Constitution or anything like that, right? A bunch of men made this up, right? The Roe v. Wade thing. A bunch of men. I thought men couldn't have a voice in women's bodies. Okay, that's a whole nother topic. Okay. You're just okay with it when they agree with you, but when they disagree with you, they have no voice? Is that what it is? Oh, okay. All right. So that's what it is. So it's literally just the right to privacy for getting an abortion. And I mean, I don't think that just because you have a right to privacy, I don't think that means getting an abortion and killing a baby. That just means that you have the right to have the privacy under medical and professionals and stuff to not release information about you medically. Now, I just don't agree with it. I mean, you can call me old fashioned, you can call me whatever you want to call me, but I just don't agree with that.
Well, here's most likely what's going to happen. Since this has been overturned, this is going to fall back on the states. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have abortion. It just means that every state, the House, the leadership of that state will decide the terms of either you can or you can't. And if you can, what are those terms? So you're going to have places like California and many liberal states that are still going to have abortions. But there's going to be a little bit of restriction here, but you can still have an abortion. But there are going to be states like South Carolina and Tennessee and many others. I think there's like 22 states now that are trying to pass a heartbeat bill. So that means that it will be illegal in 22 states, almost half the states in this country, where you can have an abortion. And so the question comes down, does the federal government really have that right to pass a mandate through the Supreme Court that can restrict states from setting their own laws and governing the state as they wish they can by the leadership and vote of those constituents in that state? I say that this should be a state right. And I appreciate our Supreme Court leaders passing this rule, because now it's giving to the states to decide. California will continue to have these abortions along with many, many other states. Illinois, New York, they're going to have abortions. No. You got Massachusetts, you've got so many liberal states that might even ratchet it up a little bit. But you know, countries, places like South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, if we want to limit that right, we'll have that right to do it. And I think that's fair. It doesn't mean you can't get an abortion. You may have to cross the state line. You may have to do something different. But it does say that these states are going to make those choices. Now, it's interesting because you have so many people getting abortions based on an assumption that it's my body, my choice. I want to just say this about abortion. It's not your right to say that it's my body, my choice if it affects the life of another person. And since we know that babies do have heartbeats well into their first trimester, it's very, very dangerous to make that statement that you have a right to affect your child. So I would say that the ruling on this is incredibly great for the era that we're living in. Well, what do you think?
Well, the reason for me, I agree with you completely, but the reason for me that they overturned this is because they went so far crazy with it. They just went crazy with it.
That's a good point because, they did.
It went from, okay, you can have an abortion to you can have an abortion up to 8 months, to you can have an abortion up to 9 months, to you can even kill the baby after birth.
Well, there is this idea in America that unhealthy babies or babies without opportunity would and should have the right to be aborted by a conversation with the mother. In other words, if you are highly impoverished, wow, who are we talking about when we use that term? Because that is often used in describing the rights of people.
That's most of the world.
Well, it is, and it's a lot of minorities in this country. If you can't afford a child, if you do not have opportunity to give health care to a child, then you should have a right to have a... that's a very crazy argument because, to me, Hitler did that. Hitler went through his country and decided who should live and who shouldn't live. Children that had autism, children that were handicapped, children that were maybe blind or in a wheelchair. His choice was just to exterminate these kids. And it just wasn't the Jews. It was anybody that wasn't blonde hair, blue-eyed Germans who he considered to be an elitist race that he had the right to make that decision that these people should be exterminated. Now, there are a lot of people in America, and a lot of reason because we have great health care in this country, people with deficiencies are living longer, and we can help people who have had, who are autistic. And what the left are really saying is that if you determine that baby to be that sick, it's okay to abort him. Take off on it, Jordan.
No, they're absolutely right. I just wanted to touch, so Planned Parenthood was created by Margaret Sanger, and a lot of conversations have been had about this woman, because the Planned Parenthood, New York, I think Manhattan is where it was. They took her name off of the building. Why? Well, because she's racist. So here's my question. Just here's my question. If Black Lives Matter, if there is systemic racism, if all of this is true, why are y'all not going after Planned Parenthood with everything y'all have? Because you can directly tie the line all the way to her. She actually says that she thinks it's the biggest sin in the world to have a baby. She goes on to say that minorities shouldn't have babies. And a lot of African American people, a lot more than you think, agree that this woman is racist. They actually come out and say, hey, like, you can take her name off the building, doesn't make her any less racist. So my point is, if this woman who invented Planned Parenthood wanted to maybe control the population of the black community, she's a racist after all. She puts them in the predominantly minority areas. Why is that? Right. Well, I mean, so you got to start asking yourself, at what point do we start saying, hey, guys, this is all politicized. This has nothing to do with anything. All this is you wanting to kill a baby, you wanting to do whatever you want to do with no repercussions. But with that logic comes tragedy. With that logic breeds generational curses. Because what's going to happen, look at the black community. Literally, the black community. I want to read you this real fast. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So it says, disproportionately, the leading consumer of the abortionist services is the African American female. According to the 2011 abortion surveillance report issued by the Center for Disease Control, black women make up 14% of the childbearing population. Now, 14%, that's not that big of a percentage, right? Yet obtained 36.2% of reported abortions. Black women have the highest abortion ratio in the country, with 474 abortions per 1,000 live births. Percentages at these levels illustrate that more than 19 million black babies have been aborted since 1973. Now imagine, this was in 2011. Imagine what it is in 2022. Imagine the population of the African American community, what it would be, what it would look like. Imagine how unbelievable the percentage would go, the population would grow. But instead, you're being fed these stuff where you're poor. You can't take care of a baby. Or rap music and all this stuff you listen to growing up and all this stuff, and it tells you to shake your butt and all this stuff like that. And by the time you're 15, you're pregnant. Oh, you're too young. Get an abortion. So instead of saying, hey, I was woman enough to lay there. I was woman enough to come in here and do all of this. Now I'm going to be woman enough to take care of this kid. I may need help, but I'm going to do it. That's what makes the difference between real people with actual feelings. Y'all can take this, I don't care. Real people with hearts and actual feelings versus somebody trying to find an excuse for not wanting the responsibility that is for killing the baby. That's just flat out evil. You kill the baby because you don't have money? A lot of people don't have money. They still have babies. That is a literal excuse for not having a baby. All of these things are excuses. All of them. And y'all need to tune into the next episode because we're going to dive into what these excuses are. We know that women get raped. We know that incest happens. But that's 0.3%. That's 0.3% of abortions, not 3%, 0.3%. So tune in on the next show because we're going to dive into this one big time. But this right here, all what we're talking about today, affects the black community the most. And Black Lives Matter. How are y'all not outraged?
I think what's happening since abortion has become so politicized in the last decade. Of course, it always has been, but it just seems like it's really got ramped up in the last several years. A lot of people are realizing that who are the people that really impacted because of abortion. Statistics vary a lot, but there's somewhere between 700 and 900,000 abortions a year in America, USA. So with that being said, 1/3 are blacks. If that's true, and that data does appear to suggest that, that's almost 250, 250,000 people to 300,000 people that are killed every year. That is a tremendous amount of people in this population that are just genocide.
Yeah.
And it seems like the left are okay with that. So I have a question to minorities. I have a question to Black Lives Matter. How are you good with that? You know, you say Black Lives Matter, but yet you're good with 250,000 people or more to be genocide just because of reasons. I can't afford a baby. I've made an immoral choice. I'm not ready to do this. And you're willing to say we're just going to let these babies die because we're going to protect your rights. Common sense has to come up among the black community and say we've got to stop this, and we've got to make sure that not only is Roe versus Wade overturned, but that we work hard to correct this and to never, ever let it happen again. Now, I know hardships can happen to people. You get pregnant, you're 16, you're 20, you can't afford a child for whatever reason, but you can't just abort a child. Some of the greatest leaders in the world were born out of poverty and hard circumstances. So it doesn't mean there's not opportunity there. You just got to look at the facts and realize you're pregnant. This baby's got to be brought into this world. If you don't want it, give it up for adoption, but don't abort these babies. Close with some arguments, Jordan, here.
Well, let's all just think for a second. 700,000 to 900,000 a year. How many of those babies could have grown up to been, I don't know, a scientist that could have cured cancer for everybody, for every sort of it? What happens if one of those babies is the next Martin Luther King? What happens if it's the guy that comes in or the woman that comes in and pioneers something that is you never thought was impossible? You just stole that, not just from them, but from everyone. Do you understand that? Now, I know some of you are saying, oh, well, that's just a stretch, Jordan. All these babies ain't going to... How do you know? Show me that data. Show me that data where all of these babies you're killing ain't going to be somebody great in this country. Show me that data. Oh, there is none? Okay, that's what I thought. Because they're dead. You can't ask them.
You know, kids are kids. They've got a right to be protected, and we've got to stand up and say, who's going to fight for these children? I'm going to do it. You're going to do it. And it seems like the Supreme Court has made that choice. So once again, it's good having you to tune in to New American Movement. Thank you so much. God bless you. Have a great day, and we'll see you at the next show.